over some tracing now, and I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do it. If you happen to have tracing paper, sometimes you can use wax paper to go in your kitchen, but I'm going to also show you a window with the light coming through a window to tape it to the window. And if you another method would be if you have a glass tabletop, transparent tabletop, that you could put your paper down on and have the light come through. All right, so another way to do some tracing, if you don't have any tracing paper, first off, to find your image, and it helps if your image is on a piece of material that's really thick, this won't work because the light won't come through it. But this should work. I'm gonna hold that there. Now I could hold everything, but if I got tape, boy, and tape helps. So also, the more contrast your image has, the more you'll be able to see it and trace things. If it's really hardly any contrast at all, it'll be hard to see details and trace them. Drawing paper, depending on how thick you might be, oh, that's not too bad, might not work because it might be thick and that might not be translucent enough. Now, if that happens, take this away. You can use a piece of copy paper that you might have that is usually and you could hold these things, but I'll tape it here. Now, it might be nice. You can also, if your paper, you can see directly through it. What you can even, I'm going to use this paper as my tracing material, and then take it to my drawing pad. But you could take your piece of drawing paper, if it's translucent enough, and actually just move it around and kind of do it directly from this situation and repeat shapes and stuff like that, and just do it all on window. The other thing that works is if you have a glass table, putting the the papers on top of that and having a light from underneath. And I can follow the lines of this. Now, depending on how much detail you want, you could go with all these little lines in here. It depends on what your image is. And you're creating a contour line. And even kind of drawing where there's not necessarily a line, but where there's difference in value. So I'm creating a line that to show where there's that difference in value from light to darker, slightly darker. All right. If you're doing those methods, it helps for this paper, the thing you're tracing, to be transparent enough, as opposed to really thick and opaque where the light won't come through it. But if you do have tracing paper, that you can use straight down over the object itself. And when you're doing this, when you're using your tracing paper, if you have some tracing paper, if you put a dead center, if you want to use and get the most of the tracing paper, you're going to kind of kill the whole piece that way. Whereas you can start out by kind of putting it in one corner. Then if you need to use other parts of it, you have more parts of your tracing paper to utilize. Let's use this guy. It helps also if your image has more contrast to it. It's kind of harder to see in this one, the details than I can see in this one. Anyway, so I can lay that over the top and kind of follow our long surface. And about copying things or tracing things, copying. If it is an image and you take it and copy it and don't alter it in any way, that can infringe copyright depending on the image itself. Now, you're going to take for this project, you're going to do a lot of manipulation. You're just kind of using these tracings to build your composition out of. And so you are manipulating quite a bit, and you're doing it in not posting anywhere except for in the D2L kind of thing, which is a closed system, so to speak. So you're not posting in a public place. You're also probably not making money off of it, which is another big thing that changes the way people perceive things. But if you were to you can't just lift an image and use it exactly as it is, especially if you are selling that image. You would need the copyright permission. But there are times, like you may have seen, political things, or Disney's a big one where people have taken images of Mickey Mouse or other Disney characters and used them in artwork and did satire. So there are things, but it gets very difficult. It has to, if they want to bring you to court, it can be debated. and it can go before the judge. So generally, depending on what you're doing, you want to get permission or create your own thing. So I have my traced teeth, and I could do more. So that's our paper. You can do different types, magazines can work, images like that. You print stuff in, print stuff out. And we can trace that on here. And you remember you're creating a composition, so you want to put some thought and plan that out. You might want to do a little rough sketch, a thumbnail sketch of what your kind of like general composition before you start to commit to it fully. But I'll just put this guy here. Now, one way I could do this is just to press down. I go over the lines and press down. I'll get a light, very light line. I got to press pretty hard. Hard thing about that, the difficulty of that is it does not press pretty hard. Okay, and when I lift it up like this, it is very hard to see, but I can just see it, and I'm holding the thing so I don't move it. And actually, you could tape this down if you can do that, and I would follow along. And it's exciting watching you follow lines. But anyway, and if I messed up, I could kind of reline it up with that line below and continue. The other way to do it, instead of pressing really hard, and the problem with pressing really hard is you end up with this indentation that you can't kind of get rid of later on if you want to erase it. So I have it this way. I have pencil marks on this side. I can flip it over, and I can kind of go over, and just do the T part. It like this. Kind of essentially making my own carbon paper, sort of carbon paper. If you're, those of you who may have learned to type on a typewriter back in the olden days, you would put a piece of carbon paper in there if you wanted a copy. Yes, that was how it was done. One copy at a time. All right, that's enough. So I have that. Now, if I lay it there, and I'm ignoring that other line, I can go over those lines. I don't have to press quite so hard. I'm not trying to indent into, make an indentation. All right, that's enough. But now, it's a little, you can kind of see it in the image. It's a little bit easier to see, and I can then go back over those a little heavier as I need to. And again, for the project with line, you'd be going over these with marker. I would continue. It's really exciting watching me. All right, and I could keep I'd fill my composition. And you want to think about your imagery and everything like that for your idea. So, kind of do some brainstorming and kind of preliminary sketches on some scrap paper. The one thing you want to be careful of, is smudging. And sometimes what you can use is another piece of paper, since I have this handy. Even your hand, my hand, I'm left-handed, I'll smudge over things. I can sometimes use another clean piece of paper to lay my, to use to place there as I work, so my hand doesn't rub around, and I'll have this like all the graphite there. So that can keep my hand clean and keep me from smudging as much, but you can always erase. Now, if you didn't have tracing paper and you did the window thing, you could do the same processes. And just by it's harder to see this way, you can shade the back of it, and then you could trace that on to that and transfer that graphite onto the paper, or press really hard. But again, you'll end up with indentations in your paper, which it's hard to see in the video, but it can be done. Anyway, so you're going to create a composition with your different tracings. All right? Get to work.